Namaste, hello, and welcome to the Dharma podcast. In today's episode, we will look at a rather profound topic related to the timeless spiritual heritage of Bharatavarsha. This is the unbroken heritage of our rishis, sadhus, sannyasis, and swamis who not only built our culture and society but kept it alive. But before that, I would like to say a few words about how this spiritual heritage has eroded after independence, just to provide, uh, you know, a contrast. And nowhere is this erosion more visible than in cinema. A vicious trend that has made devastating inroads in Indian cinema over the last decade and a half is to justify every crime, every vice, every depravity committed by its practitioner. Let's take a random example. I mean, there are literally hundreds of examples that we can cite, but here's a random one. In 2021, an eminently trashy film, Tamil film, was released, Master. In that, there is a heartless villain. That character is played by Vijay Sethupathi. His villainy is justified by blaming it on his unfortunate and dark experience as an orphaned adolescent. He had a rotten teenage. That's pretty much how his villainy is justified. And by giving such justification, the movie falls back on the easiest and the most low level device of blaming others for your misfortune. By this horrible logic, everyone who has had a troubled adolescence will or should become a criminal. Now, notwithstanding everything else, all such movies reflect either of the following two things. First, the complete artistic barrenness which is plaguing Indian cinema. Second, the emergence of a new breed of story writers and directors who seem to be addicted to violence and degeneracy. Now, what I just said so far might appear to be an outlandish preface to the profound real life story that we will discuss in this episode. But as we go along, it will become clear that this outlandishness serves as a good contrast. Sadguru Shri Sridhara Swami MAHARAJ, he was one of the most illustrious sadhus of the 20th century. His hilltop ashram at Varadapura, which is 72 kilometres from Shivamogga in Karnataka, his ashram is a renowned Punya Kshetra and it attracts lakhs of devotees throughout not only South India but throughout the world. He hails from the glorious tradition of Sri Samartha Ramadasa, who was the spiritual architect of Chhatrapati Sivaji Maharaj, and the sublime and exalted life of Sadguru Sridhara Swami is deeply inspirational. It is profoundly humbling, to put it mildly. This is the story of a boy born in poverty in a remote, decrepit village in northern Karnataka. He was a boy who lost his father as an infant. He was a boy who also lost his elder brother, elder sister, and his mother, and became an orphan when he was just 12. He was a boy on the threshold of adolescence who had no family or an elderly voice of sound guidance to show him the path in life. He was a boy who had nobody to ask him even the most basic question that we all take for granted. Have you eaten? This boy, this orphan teenager could have become anything. He could have become a cleaner in a restaurant. He could have become a gatekeeper at a cinema hall. He could have become a coolie, or even worse, he could have become a juvenile delinquent. But to our everlasting fortune, he became Sadguru Sridhara Swami. And the seeds of this journey from an orphan boy to an enlightened sannyasi can be traced to his childhood. When Sridhara was just 5 years old, he used to constantly recite a well-known Marathi verse of Sri Samartha Ramadasa, and I'll translate the verse. The hours and minutes have passed by. The bell of the clock has made the jhund jhund sound. Our age is simply wasting away. Why don't we chant the name of Rama even now? This early spiritual seasoning, it had a profound effect. It stood in good stead, and it invisibly guided the orphaned boy Sridhara Swami. Among other things, it imbibed inside him a deep hunger for education. Sridhara did his schooling in different places, but primarily he had his education in Hyderabad and Gulbarga. His unfortunate circumstances, however, did not deter Sridhara from his pursuit of learning. As a boy, Sridhara enrolled in the 6th standard in Gulbarga, and he stayed in his aunt's home, that is his mother's younger sister. He stayed at her home, and he quickly distinguished himself in school as a brilliant and bright student. But outside school, he also enthusiastically took part in various festivals like Ramanavami, Krishnashtami, Shankara Jayanti, Madhva Jayanti. He became a volunteer, and he selflessly served both the devotees and the general public alike. And on one Shankara Jayanti, he listened to a learned discourse by an eminent Pandit on the Shankara Bhashyas, that is Adi Shankara's commentaries on the Upanishads and other sacred Hindu philosophical texts. And this discourse, it opened a whole ocean of insight for Sridhara Swami, and with that, he had found his life's calling. He decided to dedicate the rest of his life to spreading the message of Vedanta. Sridhara was just 15 years old. And as a first step towards the goal, he decided to embark on tapas side by side with his school studies. But then, this tapas required complete detachment, it required isolation, and it required an atmosphere of absolute peace, calmness, serenity, away from all bonds of family attachment. So, a well-wisher in Gulbarga, he heard this desire, and he called Sridhara and told that he knew of one such place. And this place was a student's hostel for orphaned boys. It was located in Pune. When he heard this, Sridhara happily agreed. And so this well-wisher, he wrote a letter to a gentleman named Shri Ketkar, who was the head of the hostel, and gave it to Sridhara. Later, the boy bid an emotional farewell to his aunt and his various well-wishers and friends in Gulbarga and headed towards Pune. Sridhara completed the journey from Gulbarga to Pune largely on foot, walking. He was wearing just the traditional attire of a Vatu or a student. He wore just a dhoti, and he carried a humble cloth bag on his shoulder. In 1923 or 24, he got admission in the hostel of the school and continued his education in the high school. Now, there is a brief story to this school's founding, and that itself, opens a sublime insight into the values and the ideals which the society of that period abided by. This school was established by none other than Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak. A stone plaque was erected prominently in the center of the school's campus, and it declared its motto in large font, and I'll read it out. Even if one student leaves this school armed with his ideals and purpose, he will be able to take the leadership of the whole world. And when the teenager Sridhara read these words, he felt thrilled. And there, once he was in the school, he joyfully subjected himself to the discipline and the rigor of the institution, and with each passing day, his excitement multiplied. He was especially impressed with its teaching methods, and eventually, Sridhara became the first person to attend to any student who fell ill. He would sit by the patient's side till he had fully recovered, and this was a seva that he had voluntarily undertaken. Sridhara's spotless conduct and his helping nature quickly endeared him to everybody in the school, both in the student body as well as in the management circles. Overall, this was how Sridhara's typical routine looked like. He woke up before all the other students woke up. He led the morning physical exercises, then he attended classes, revised his lessons, he nursed the sick students, he helped in various errands, and found time for doing his japa and intense tapas. As time passed, his tapas only intensified, and unsurprisingly, he earned the nickname Sridhara Swami from all his students and seniors and juniors. Sridhara's tapas constituted the recitation of the sacred name of Sri Ramachandra or Sri Datta in silence and solitude. As his tapas intensified, deepened, and consumed longer and longer durations, Sridhara found that the hostel's regulations were detrimental to this sadhana. And so he respectfully approached the management and informed them of the decision to take leave because it was obstructing his sadhana, and he said that he would attend school but he would not live in the hostel. After this, Sridhara took a small room in Pune on rent. It was near the school. But because he could not afford to pay the rent, he ran various errands for the owner and did other odd jobs to earn a rather meager income. And all these activities consumed a few hours of his day. He also earned his food through the time-honored method of madhukari or bhiksha. Just 1 century ago, ours was a society which still believed that giving bhiksha to a student was an act of piety, it was an act of great punya or spiritual merit. And by this time, Sridhara Swami had already earned respect in the society as a saintly boy and a devoted student. And so, to whichever house he went, he received copious amounts of bhiksha, and true to his temperament, he gave away the excess bhiksha to other poor and struggling students like him. But if this was not enough, any money that remained with him from his paltry earnings went into buying books for students who could not afford them. I will narrate two moving anecdotes from this period which opens an ennobling world of values and ideals. Anecdote 1. On one occasion, a poor student named Kulkarni, he approached Sridhara and he explained his difficulty to Sridhara. He said, "Look, I have no money to buy the textbooks prescribed for my exams, and if you help me, I will be able to sit for the exam. Otherwise, only God can help me." So when Sridhara heard these words, Kulkarni's plight deeply moved him. So without a word, he got up, took out all his books and gave them to Kulkarni. Not only that, he also paid Kulkarni's exam fees. But that year, Sridhara Swami himself did not sit for his own exam. Still, the loss of one precious academic year did not disturb Sridhara Swami. His tapas continued with the usual devotion and fervor. Anecdote 2. On this occasion, when Sridhara was attending his class, his teacher asked all the students to write down their ambitions and goals in their life. A majority of the students gave the usual expected answers. They said, "I want to become a doctor, advocate, engineer, collector," and so on. Sridhara Swami wrote just one sentence in English, and I'll read it out. Quote, "To obtain the complete grace of God and to serve mankind is the goal of my life." When the teacher read it, he was taken aback slightly, and then he looked at Sridhara Swami, and when he saw his face, the teacher was not surprised, because this kind of answer was entirely characteristic of this promising boy, and only he could write something like this as the goal of his life. Around the same time, Sridhara Swami's daily routine as a student in Pune resembled that of our ancient rishis. He woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, he had a cold water bath, and then he sat for the Gayatri Japam. At sunrise, he performed Surya Namaskarams and then immersed himself in Rama Puja. After completing this, he revised his school lessons, and about 10, he headed out for Bhiksha. By this time, Sridhara Swami had learned the entire Bhagavad Gita by heart. So, as he set out for his Bhiksha, he continuously recited shlokas from the Bhagavad Gita as he went from house to house. And by the time he had completed the last house, the Parayana of all the 18 chapters from the Bhagavad Gita would have come to an end. And once the Bhiksha was completed, he took it and then he set aside one portion of the Bhiksha for cows. And it was only after the Gaumata ate that he began to eat. And any excess Bhiksha that remained was given to other poor students, which I have already mentioned. And after this, he attended school. And in the evening, he took another bath and sat for the Gayatri Japam again. After this, he would immerse himself in his tapas. Late night, he consumed a small amount of food, studied and revised his school lessons again, and finally, he went to sleep. And as his sadhana deepened, he completely gave up eating dinner at night. Now, he visited the nearby Hanuman temple and he would sit before the Anjaneya Murti and began to recite numerous stotrams. After this, he performed 108 Pradakshina Namaskarams. And everybody in the locality who observed this boy, who saw that his face radiated a blazing tejas, resplendence, all of them correctly concluded that Sridhara did not belong to this Kali Yuga. Eventually, Sridhara got in touch. He was acquainted with a very senior sadhaka in Pune. His name was Palanitkar, and this gentleman invited him to his house. And as their interactions became more frequent, Palanitkar took the boy under his wings. He narrated several elevating stories and anecdotes about our ancient rishis and our spiritual tradition, and gave him several sacred books to read. And all of this produced the anticipated impact. One fine day, Sridhara Swami approached Sri Palanitkar and told him, "I have decided to perform tapas like our ancient rishis, and I too wish to become a rishi." And as history shows us, Sridhara Swami did eventually become a rishi. He became Sadguru Shri Sridhara Swami Maharaj. And on that note, we can conclude this episode. If you found this episode useful, if you like the Dharma podcast, please subscribe to our channel. Please like and share our videos, and do leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And last but not the least, I have to express my heartfelt and reverential gratitude to the late great Vidwan Mahamahopadhyaya Shri N. Ranganatha Sharma, from whose beautiful and ennobling Kannada biography on Shri Sridhara Swami that I have made this episode. Namaste.